This island is smaller than New York City. It has no oil, no gas, no farmland, no natural defenses, nothing to stop a bigger neighbor from simply taking it. It even imports its own drinking water. And this year, it became the second richest country on Earth. $108,000 of economic output for every man, the first place in Asia to ever cross 6 figures ahead. The world's rich don't just visit anymore. They move their money here, permanently. 2,000 of the wealthiest families on the planet have set up private vaults on an island you can drive across in 40 minutes. So, how does a swamp with nothing under the ground end up richer than America? It found the one thing it could sell that almost nobody else can: trust. For most of its history, Singapore wasn't a country. It was a fishing village, a swampy dot the old Malay sailors called Temasek, that the British turned into a trading post because it sat in a useful spot. February 15th, 1942, the useful spot becomes a target. Japan takes Singapore from the British in 7 days. Churchill calls it the worst disaster in British military history. And for 3 years and 8 months of occupation, the island that would one day store the world's fortunes can't feed itself. August 9th, 1965. It gets worse in a new way. Most countries fight for independence. Singapore got fired from one, voted out of Malaysia, the only country in modern history made independent against its own will. On live television, Lee Kuan Yew, who had spent his career fighting to keep Singapore in Malaysia, broke down crying. Look at the map and you'll see why. A dot between two much bigger neighbors. Its drinking water piped in from the country that had just kicked it out, and could, in theory, close the tap. Indonesia to the south, mid-confrontasi, had already put bombs in downtown Singapore. 2 million people, double-digit unemployment, no army to speak of. A country that could be strangled by a phone call. His economic advisors laid it out for him. Sir, we have no oil, no minerals, no land. We have nothing to sell. We have a harbor. We have the rule of law the British left behind. And we have 2 million people who need a paycheck. So that's the product. Nobody in the room knew it yet, but that meeting was the pitch deck for a $2 trillion business. Everything Singapore became traces back to 3 bets Lee's government made before anyone knew they'd pay off. Vision 1, sell trust. In 1960s, Asia, doing business mostly meant wondering which official to bribe and whether a coup would eat your factory. Singapore's pitch was radical. Courts that enforce contracts, police that don't take envelopes, and a ruling party that literally dresses the part. Lee's People's Action Party wears white at every rally to this day. The uniform is the mission statement, whiter than white. Lee enforced it like he meant it. In 1986, one of his own ministers, an old comrade, was caught taking about $1 million Singapore dollars in bribes. He asked to see Lee. Lee refused until the investigation was done. No quiet exit, no favor for a friend. The man took his own life before charges were filed. Every investor on earth heard the message. The other half of the logic: pay ministers over $1 million a year. So much that a bribe looks like a pay cut. Stern, unsentimental, allergic to nonsense. That's how you go third world to first in a single generation. Lee literally titled his memoirs that. Vision 2, geography is destiny, so charge rent on it. Singapore sits on the Strait of Malacca, one of the busiest shipping lanes on Earth. Gulf oil going east, Chinese goods going west. All of it sails past Singapore's front porch. Here's a question. Singapore has zero oil, not a drop. So why is it one of the biggest oil hubs on the planet? Because while other countries prayed to find oil, Singapore made a stranger bet. You don't need to own the oil. You need to be where the oil has to stop. Today, Jurong Island, 7 little islands the government fused into one with land reclamation, refines about 1.5 million barrels a day. 3rd largest refining center on Earth, behind only Houston and Rotterdam. and every passing ship needs to fill its own tank. So Singapore is also the world's largest ship refueling station. Nearly 55 million tons of marine fuel a year. Other people's oil, refined, priced, shipped out, for a fee. The whole country is a toll booth with a chemistry degree. Vision 3. Build the vault, then make it fun. Corporate tax, 17%, 13.5% with the right incentives. The same product London and New York sell, at half the sticker price. 4,200 multinationals run their regional headquarters here. In the 1980s, Lee loosened the rules on finance and the banks moved in. His son, Lee Hsien Loong, added the missing piece in the 2000s. Rich people won't park their fortunes somewhere boring. So Singapore built fun. Marina Bay Sands, Gardens by the Bay, a Formula One night race, and 2 casinos. Sorry, integrated resorts. The government didn't love the word casino, and the timing was perfect. China and India were minting millionaires by the day. Come for the race, stay for the private bank. So which vision pays the bills today? Not oil. Services are about 70% of the economy. Finance, insurance, and trade at the top. The direct children of visions 1 and 3. Manufacturing is another 5th, and its hottest corner is AI electronics, up 60% in a year. Oil was never the destination. It was the ladder. The result, assets under management, money the world pays Singapore to babysit, went from $420 billion in 2004 to $3.6 trillion by 2022. Now here's the part they don't put in the brochure. Singapore isn't just where rich people keep money. Singapore is a rich person. The government runs 2 of the largest investment funds on the planet. GIC, the state's official investment arm, manages an estimated $900 billion. Temasek, a holding company the state founded in 1974 out of its leftover ports and airlines, holds another 430 billion Singapore dollars. Add the National Pension Fund, and the Singapore state controls roughly $2 trillion in assets. A sovereign wealth fund, by the way, is just a government's personal investment account. A country playing the stock market with the profits from running itself. It goes further. The state owns about 90% of the land. Nearly 8 in 10 citizens live in government-built apartments. The airline, the port, the phone company, the biggest bank. The state holds stakes in all of them through Temasek. Singapore doesn't run like a country with a budget. It runs like a company with a flag. So how is the company actually doing? Time to read the scoreboard. Let's put the miracle on a chart. 1965, Singapore's output per person is about $500 a year. Third world money. 1990, the year Lee finally hands over the Prime Minister's office. $12,000, 24 times richer in one generation, his generation. Then the overtakes start, past Malaysia, the country that fired it, past the United Kingdom, the empire that lost it, past Japan, and in the 2010s, past the United States itself. Today, $108,000 per person, second on earth, and more than 8 times its old landlord, Malaysia. Where does that money come from? Stack the layers. The world's money under management, $3.6 trillion. The state's own funds, $2 trillion. The third largest refining hub. The world's busiest ship refueling station, 4,200 corporate headquarters, 2,000 family offices, 6 different customers, all paying Singapore for the same 3 things: trust, location, competence. Of course, build the world's most trusted vault, and eventually, the world's dirtiest money wants in too. 2023, police seize 3 billion Singapore dollars, gold bars, luxury cars, 152 properties, from 10 men who had spent years washing dirty money through Singapore's banks. Asia's biggest laundering case ever. Their sentences, barely more than a year each. The bank's fine, 27 million, a parking ticket. The vault doesn't ask where the money slept last night. That's rather the point of a vault. And the citizens pay for the miracle differently. A median home at 790,000 Singapore dollars, a cost of living 30% above America, and a press that Lee kept, in his own words, subordinated to the overriding needs of the integrity of Singapore. The formula was never free. The price was just written in a different currency. Lee Kuan Yew died in March 2015. 250,000 people stood in the rain to watch his coffin pass. His party is still in power, 60 years and counting. And in 2026, his geography bet got its final exam. February 2026. War chokes the Strait of Hormuz, the channel carrying a quarter of the world's seaborne oil. Tankers stall. In Singapore, ship fuel jumps 40%. That should be a catastrophe for an island that imports every drop it uses. Instead, watch Lee's machine work. His refineries were never built to depend on one supplier. They pull crude from everywhere, keep running above 90% capacity, and with refined fuel suddenly scarce across Asia, Singapore's margins hit a 4-year high. The world's choke point crisis became Singapore's payday. That's the difference between owning a choke point and weaponizing one. Iran closed its strait and set its own region on fire. Lee kept his open, neutral, and expensive for 60 years. And when someone else's door slammed shut, his toll booth simply raised its prices. Singapore never found oil. It never needed to. It noticed that in a world full of countries you can't quite trust, trust itself is the scarcest commodity on earth. And it cornered the market. The catch is that a perfect vault doesn't care whose money it holds. And some of the people who built it can no longer afford to live beside it. Lee Kuan Yew, near the end of his life, was asked about how he'd governed. He didn't apologize for any of it. "If nobody's afraid of me," and he said, "I'm meaningless."